Welcome to the Center for Security Policy. I'm Fred Fleitz. This is the first in a series of short videos on the Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. On December 1st, the IAEA issued an important report on Iran's past nuclear weapons-related work. This is actually known in UN lingo as the possible military dimensions of Iran's nuclear program. This is an important issue because the IAEA has to know this to establish a baseline to verify the nuclear deal. The agency has to know what types of nuclear weapons-related activities in which Iran was engaged and where were these activities taking place. Now, the Obama administration, at least until September, had insisted that this was an important issue that had to be resolved before sanctions against Iran could be lifted. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a snag in including this issue in the nuclear deal. Until May, the administration claimed it would be in the nuclear deal. But in late May, maybe mid-May, the Iranians said they would not agree to this. Now, the U.S. made a proposal to try to include it. The Iranians balked. So when the deal was announced in mid-July, it was unclear how the issue of possible military dimensions would be resolved. We were simply assured by the Obama administration that it would be resolved. Well, on July 17, 2015, we found out part of what this compromise arrangement was to resolve Iran's past nuclear weapons-related work. When Senator Tom Cotton and Congressman Mike Pompeo went to the IAEA headquarters in Vienna and were told that a secret side deal was struck between Iran and the IAEA to resolve this issue. This arrangement was outside of the nuclear agreement, but still was something that Iran was expected to do. Now, we were told by Obama administration officials in July, August, and September that this issue had to be resolved, and they sort of implied whether or not it was formally part of the final agreement. Well, the agreement got even more controversial a few days after the Cotton-Pompeo trip to Vienna, when the administration revealed in classified briefings to Congress that under the secret side deals, Iranians would be collecting samples against past Iranian nuclear weapons work. Now, as a former CIA analyst, I was stunned by this. There's a certain standard for collecting samples in cases like this. First of all, you have to have collectors who are neutral. The collectors also have to be able to go wherever they want, use whatever equipment they want. We found out from these classified briefings that not only would Iranians be collecting samples at a variety of facilities, there'd be restrictions on what they could collect and where they could collect them. This raised serious questions and, frankly, ridicule from members of Congress. And some members of Congress actually said that this arrangement was similar to allowing NFL players to mail in their own urine samples for drug testing investigations. It was just considered absurd. Well, these inspections of the PMD issue using Iranian inspectors began in mid-September 2015 when Iranian inspectors went to a facility called Parchin. This is a military base where Iran allegedly has been engaged in explosive testing related to the development of nuclear warheads. They were allowed to go into a building, and according to press reports, the equipment was removed from the building, and the building had been renovated. So at the time in September, it appeared that nothing was found. Now, IAEA officials, two of them, were allowed to visit the building, but this seemed to be a pro forma visit. It was by IAEA Director Amano and his deputy. It was not actually a visit to collect samples. Well, even though Iranians went into the building at Parchin, and we found out recently, and this has not been publicly disclosed, there were significant restrictions on what these Iranian inspectors were allowed to inspect at Parchin. Even though there were these restrictions and Iranians collected the samples, the IAEA nevertheless determined in its December 1st report that the Iranians lied about the purpose of this building. The Iranians said that this building was for chemical storage. The IAEA says in its report that's not true, that the evidence that was collected as well as satellite imagery proves this wasn't true. Well, there's another example where it appears that the Iranians were not being truthful with the IAEA, and that concerns something called nuclear detonators. These are explosive devices which do have dual-use applications, but the Iranian government said it was trying to acquire these detonators for the oil and gas business. The IAEA said in its report that that simply is not credible, that the IAEA officials didn't believe it. So this report came out in December, and in addition to these issues where the Iranians apparently gave false answers, on a number of other questions, they simply gave answers that provided no information. They appeared to go through the motions in answering the IAEA's questions. Well, does this mean sanctions won't be lifted against Iran? Because clearly, according to the IAEA report, Iran didn't cooperate with the investigation. The file on Iran's research of nuclear weapons has not been closed. Well, the answer would be no. And the reason is, and this is based on statements by Obama administration officials in October, that the U.S. only expected Iran to cooperate with the investigation by answering all the questions. A State Department official, an unnamed one I might add, told the press that the quality of the information provided in this inquiry by Iran doesn't matter. And the reason given was that the U.S. has already come to its own conclusion about Iran's past pursuit of nuclear weapons. That is, the Obama administration has decided Iran hasn't pursued nuclear weapons and isn't interested in any information to the contrary because it would undermine this legacy deal of President Obama, the nuclear agreement with Iran. So what's going to happen? Well, we now know that the IAEA Board of Governors will meet before the end of December, and they are going to declare the file on Iran's past nuclear weapons-related work closed, even though this report clearly did not close it. So what does this mean? This is more evidence that this nuclear agreement is frankly national security fraud. It is flawed on so many grounds, which the Center for Security Policy has been describing again and again and again. But this is a clear instance of fraud. The Obama administration said that these issues had to be resolved before sanctions would be lifted. They weren't resolved, and the Obama administration is going to lift them anyway. National security fraud. This is just another reason why the next president has to tear up this terrible agreement on his or her first day in office. I'm Fred Fleitz. Thanks for watching.